Hello and welcome to TalkSped. Today, for the global perspective, I'm very excited to talk with my guest, Tommy, who's an international school psychologist, and he will tell us a little bit about his education. Tommy is currently working with school age population in Beijing, and we've coordinated our time zones so that we can have a conversation and learn a little bit from Tommy about where he's working and how is it all coming along from him all the way from Virginia to Beijing. So welcome, Tommy. Give us a little background on your education and tell us about your work.
Okay, thanks for having me. So I went to graduate school in Virginia for school psychology at the College of William & Mary. And then I practiced in Southern California for 3 years, working with ages K through age 22, working in with different types of populations, some low incident populations, some general education population, and other things like that. And then I've been in Beijing for about 1.5 years now. And here at the Learning Frontier, I work with occupational therapists, speech therapists, and mental health counselors. And here I do a lot of assessments, psychoeducational assessments, helping kids with academic needs, and also functional behavior assessments for behavior, and also just consulting with teachers and parents on how to support their students with any academic troubles that they're having.
Great, Tommy. That's a nice overview. So looks like you have a group of therapists who are working with you. And I am always curious, and I've been to Beijing and I know how challenging it is to move around without knowing Mandarin over there. So tell us a little bit about your experience. What is it like at work? Are you able to, do you have most of your clients, are they fluent in English, and how are you managing both professionally and personally with the whole language and culture situation?
So obviously when I first came here, I didn't really know any Mandarin, and so it was a bit of a struggle. But because of we have about half of our staff is English speaking, half of our staff here is Chinese and English bilinguals. So they were able to help us, get adjusted with things, and if we have any concerns, they're able to support us that way. And I've been studying Chinese since I've been here, so I'm now, a little bit able to navigate my way around in Beijing and by myself. Professionally, most of the students we serve here at the Learning Frontier from international schools. So some of them are Chinese citizens, and some of them are international. But all of them have some kind of proficiency in English. So most of the students we work with are able to work with in English. And for some of our younger or kids who are not as strong in English, our speaking staff are able to help us and support it by translating during sessions or with parents as well, who may not be able to speak English as well.
Great. So that's wonderful to know. So it looks like you have a lot of small group, one-on-one interactions. So how did COVID affect your practice? Pre-COVID, tell us a little bit about your practice, and post-COVID, and where are you right now in Beijing?
So we probably last year in February, Beijing locked down pretty much everywhere because of COVID. So we began working from home, and some of our therapists were able to start to switch from in-person therapy to online therapy to continue to give support to the students that needed it. And all other times, or for me, I wasn't able to do testing online. We were able to switch more to focusing on making workshops or giving training to parents and teachers in order to support their kids during that time that they were doing predominantly online learning. Starting in the summer, we were able to open offices and have kids come back in person for some support individually. And then now this school year, back almost the whole school year in person. And so at first, the biggest thing that we saw that was different from pre-COVID was that there were a lot more behavioral issues because the kids had been home for so long doing online learning, especially younger students. they were just having a hard time adjusting to be back in the classroom and following those routines that normally are expected. So we were doing a lot more behavior support schools, reminding them of the behavior management techniques that they can use to help get kids following the expectations. Now that we've become a bit more normal, so to speak, academic concerns are coming back out, and we're looking more at if the kids have gotten appropriate instruction throughout this whole period, or when they were online, were they maybe missing something or not getting the additional support that they needed. So we're working now more with schools to make sure that they're providing the appropriate intervention. Is it too early to tell that there's a concern, or do the kids still need a little bit more time to adjust to being back into school and seeing if they're making progress from when maybe they started out a bit more behind their classmates, and working with them that way. And we're again getting more and more back to where we were before COVID, working with those kind of typical issues that you would normally see in the schools.
Right. So Tommy, I know that in the US there's a lot of focus right now, because we are still, the school districts I work with and a lot of public schools here in California, we're doing a lot of focus on social emotional health, right? The mental health component. So you think that was still very critical to address those when the students got back, right? In the school?
Absolutely. When they were still doing online learning, we were focusing that same way on, making sure that their emotions were in check and that they weren't getting so anxious. But even coming back, I think it's just a big transition to be online learning for so long and then back to being in person all day or being in school all day. So we did have to put more focus onto that social, emotional, and that behavioral piece than we were used to at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we have to look at Beijing again, where things are coming back in person, and talk to other schools and other places in the country where schools are opening to see what the concerns are, and then hopefully be more prepared to address them, as we know that schools really lean towards the academic progress, and that becomes a focus, but we cannot stress the importance of the social emotional health of our students and our staff as they return back to somewhat of a normalcy for the coming school year, mostly in the United States. So tell me a little bit more, Tommy, about you shared a little bit about your now that you guys are back in person, and initial gears was a lot more towards behavior. What are some of the barriers? So I understand that you have these support system of interpreters and other staff, but how do students do the generalization or practice their skills? Would that be very difficult for some of them, because it's the international school, right? Support that
Yes.
you're providing. So tell us.
Yeah, so that is one of our biggest challenges, especially with like the speech therapy and occupational therapy, where we are able to work with our students maybe once a week, and for maybe an hour. And for some of the kids who have more severe issues, that's really not a lot of intervention time. So even if they're able to, give the homework or assignments to the parents to practice at home, we're not always sure if that's really being done. And because we are not associated with the school, we're not affiliated with the school, we're sort of limiting the amount of interaction that we have, making sure that even in school these things are done. So if I write a report and make recommendations for the school to follow, but again, unless following up with us or checking in with us, we don't really know if those recommendations are being followed or being used. So some schools we do have a closer relationship with, and we are able to follow up more and they check in with us more, but that's not always the case. So it can be difficult to know how much support the student is actually getting once they're done working with us, and once they're not coming back to see us regularly.
In general, Tommy, what is your experience of special education with some of the staff and the therapists that you interact with and in the school system in Beijing? Are they receptive to it? Do they work collaboratively, or are you seeing many barriers? Just curious.
For most of the international schools, at least in Beijing, there's probably about half of the schools that are moving to be more inclusive, and half of the schools that are still kind of trying to stay more exclusive. And so all those schools, if you have learning support staff, the learning support staff are usually pretty receptive to our recommendations and want to try things to help support their students. I think for some of the general education teachers, they can be a little bit more rigid about the amount of accommodations they're going to give, the amount of support that they're able to give, just because of the expectations in the international schools. These are schools that are trying to have very high reputations, and so sometimes they are too much support into supporting a student with difficulties. It can take away from giving support to the students that are higher achieving and are trying to excel. And that's something that happens in the US as well. But that system of special education is not guaranteed here, is not so well developed. So there can sometimes be challenges with getting the appropriate support for students.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. So tell me, towards the end, there's so much to talk to you and gain importance and learn from you, and hear about how things are happening in Beijing. But if you reflect back, what is something that you want to tell our audience today, and from your personal highlights of working in Beijing?
I think the biggest thing that I've realized while working here is that the students that I've seen in the United States and the students that I've seen here, although they may have different cultural backgrounds or different experiences, the types of support that they need or the types of challenges that they face are pretty similar. So you can kind of break them down into similar groups and say, okay, this child is having this type of problem and they need this type of support. And that kind of goes across borders in terms of the way that we support our students and the way that we can change the way that we're teaching them. It's pretty universal in terms of what kind of support that they need.
Thank you for saying that. You really bring up the point so well that, emotions, challenges, and barriers that students face, that children face, they are the same. It does not matter which part of the world you belong to. And, our emotional needs are the same. Our desire to do better and to excel and be able to be good citizens wherever we are is the same. So I think as long as we as educators are doing our job of supporting them and helping them be good citizens and be good, helping them attain their dreams and their potential with whatever barriers they face and reduce those barriers, we'll be having a much better world around us. So this is so exciting to hear that it was not a big change for you to move that transition from Virginia to Beijing and California to Beijing, and you've been able to adapt. You personally have been able to adapt to a different culture and environment, and now you're seeing that in your work, you're experiencing a lot of similar things in both the places. So thank you for sharing that, and hopefully, a lot of my friends who are here and wonder what it's like to work out there can feel a little bit more assured about taking that plunge, would you say?
Yeah, we're always looking for more specialists and more support. So anyone that wants to come is more than welcome to.
Great. Thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you for your time and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you. It was nice to talk with you.